I'm calling I'm calling to order the regular Emeryville Planning Commission meeting at 6:30 on 6/24.
Okay.
Alrighty, so we're officially in order, and then the COVID script. I would like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided under the Governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. During the public health emergency, City Hall is closed to the public. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed on channel ETV channel 27 and provide comment by submitting an online comment form, which will be then read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website at www.emeryville.org and then navigating to the Planning Commission page. Once there, you will see the link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide comment during the meeting using the raise your hand function. Visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, use *9. The Zoom call-in information is provided on the posted agenda, and there's a link on the Planning Commission page as well. Charlie, if you do a roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Chafe.
Here.
Commissioner Keller. Here. Commissioner Mendez.
Here.
Commissioner Simons.
Here.
Commissioner Zepko has an excused absence this evening. Vice Chair Young.
Here.
And Chair Thompson.
Here.
So we have a quorum of 6 commissioners.
Okay, I'm going to make an official announcement, and then we can talk more in the Planning Commissioner comments, but I am moving out of Emeryville. So today will be my last meeting. Thank you all, and we'll talk about it at the end, but I just thought I'd let you know.
And we're very sad about this.
Yeah, oddly, I'm not that far away, but I am across the border, so no longer eligible.
And I'll talk a little more about that under my director's report as well.
Okay, excellent. Now I'm going to read the public comment component, or open public comment, I should say. Now is the time for public comment portion of this meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda should have begun submittal of your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, use *9, and the clerk will call on you at the appropriate time. At this time, Charlie, are there any comments received via the online comment card, or has anyone raised their hand to make comments?
I do not have any online comment cards, and I do not see any raised hands among the attendees.
Okay, all right. Well, then, hearing no additional requests to make comments, the public comment portion of the meeting is now closed. You'll have an opportunity to address and speak on matters that are listed on the agenda when those respective items come up. So next on our agenda is the approval of the action minutes.
I would like to make a motion to approve the action minutes.
I can second that.
All right, moved by Vice Chair Young and seconded by Commissioner Chafe. Commissioner Chafe?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Mendez?
Aye.
Commissioner Simons?
Aye.
Commissioner Zepko is absent. Vice Chair Young?
Aye.
And Chair Thompson?
Aye.
6 ayes. The minutes of the last meeting are approved. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now we're going on to the Community Development Director's report.
All right, thank you, Chair Thompson and members of the commission. Please bear with me. It's a little lengthy tonight because the City Council has been doing a lot of things, but I will try to be as succinct as I can. The City Council has had 2 meetings since your last meeting, and those were on June 1st and June 15th. Planning related items on those agendas. On June 1st, the council held a study session on ways to expand the cannabis industry in Emeryville. The main takeaways from that study session, at least for me, were that the council does not want to entertain any additional retail dispensaries at this time, but they would like to convert cannabis manufacturing from a major conditional use permit to a minor conditional use permit so that they will be quicker and easier to approve. This, of course, will require an amendment to the planning regulations, which we will schedule for a public hearing at a future Planning Commission meeting. The council also took 2 actions on June 1st related to the 100% affordable housing project at 3600 San Pablo Avenue that's proposed by Resources for Community Development, or RCD. First, they approved an amendment to the pre-development loan agreement with RCD, increasing the loan amount by $1.5 million to a total amount not to exceed $3.5 million. And secondly, they authorized the city manager to execute an affordable housing and sustainable communities grant agreement with RCD, which will help to fund the 40th Street pedestrian, bicycle, and transit improvement. On June 15th, the council had a whole series of meetings, one right after the other, most of which were special meetings, and sandwiched in there among them was the regular meeting. The first meeting was a special study session to hear a presentation from the Alameda County Transportation Commission on the status of the design of the Ashby-Shellmound interchange project, which includes a separate pedestrian and bicycle bridge. And preparation of a draft environmental document is now the next step in that project. Then at a second special meeting, the council considered Planning Commission and committee appointments. Chair Thompson and Vice Chair Young were both up for reappointment to the Planning Commission this year. They are the 2 commissioners whose terms expire on June 30th of 2021. And as Chair Thompson just announced, she unfortunately is leaving the commission and so is ineligible to be reappointed. However, the council did not learn of this until fairly late, and so they deferred action on the Planning Commission appointments to allow for a broader public notice about this. And so they've now scheduled these appointments for their July 20th meeting. The effective date of these appointments will be after the commission's July 22nd meeting. So the newly appointed commissioner's first meeting will be August 26th. Meanwhile, Vice Chair Young will continue to serve on the commission until he is reappointed or replaced. And the council also made appointments to other committees, including the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, the Commission on Aging, the Economic Development Advisory Committee, the Housing Committee, the Parks and Recreation Committee, and the Public Arts Committee. So those all have some new members on them. In other matters, moving on to the regular council meeting, the council approved a contract with Fair & Peers to prepare a transportation impact assessment for the Emery Station Overland project at 1580 62nd Street, which you have previously held a study session on. The council approved their 2021 affordable housing table of rents and maximum resale prices for below market rate units. The council approves this table annually pursuant to the city's affordable housing program. And as previously requested by the City Council, staff presented a report on construction noise waivers that have been processed during the past 2 years and responded to council questions. And then at another special meeting following the regular meeting, the City Council approved a finding that the trees on the west side of Horton Street between Sherwin Avenue and 46th Street, adjacent to the Sherwin-Williams project, are nuisance trees as defined by the Emeryville Municipal Code. And they directed the Public Works Director to send a notice to the property owner ordering them to remove the trees. I understand that these trees have now been removed per the City Council's direction. And in other news, I just want to alert you to some upcoming planning related events. A couple of long range planning projects that we're working on, the housing element and the active transportation plan. There will be a virtual community workshop for the housing element next Tuesday, June 29th from noon to 1:30. And information about that, including a place where you can sign up for it, can be found by searching for the 2023 to 2031 housing element on the City of Emeryville website. And there you will find lots of information about the housing element up. On the active transportation plan, there are upcoming walking and bicycle tours, as well as a survey and lots of other useful information. And this can all be accessed at the active transportation plan website, which is emeryvillemoves.org. That's all one word, emeryvillemoves, M-O-V-E-S.org. And finally, I just want to take this opportunity to express staff's sadness at the departure of Chair Thompson from the commission and to acknowledge her very valuable service to the Emeryville community over the last 4+ years. We will miss her. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to anybody.
Thank you, Charlie. Are there any comments on the director's report? Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the disclosure of ex parte communications and identification of the conflicts of interest. Are there any disclosures at this time? Okay. So then let's move right into our public hearing, which is on the Emeryville Center for the Arts. Maru, you have a presentation, I believe?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to, can you see my screen? Okay. Good evening, Commission. I'm Miru Desai, planner for this proposal. If you may recall, last August 2020, the Commission approved an adaptive reuse of an existing 30,000 square foot building behind City Hall to accommodate an arts and cultural center. Today we are here to look at and review modifications to this proposal. In order to understand why these modifications are necessary, I will invite Chad Smalley, City's Economic Development Manager, to give a little context for the reason behind the modifications for this arts center.
Yes, thank you, Miru, and to Chair Thompson and the Commissioner. I am Chad Smalley, the Economic Development and Housing Manager with the City. Thank you for having us this evening. Just by way of some brief background, as Miru mentioned, the Commission approved a permit for adaptive reuse of this building in August of last year. And subsequent to that, in September of last year, the City Council approved a lease disposition and development agreement, what we call an LDDA, which also includes a ground lease with Orton Development, ODI, our partner in this project, to complete this project and to lease it. But the work, even though it sort of culminated in August and September of last year, obviously it's been underway for many years prior to that point. And it's important to know that, and just to understand that, so the city is a partner in this project and is the predominant source of funding for this project. And one of the objectives here, and this is communicated through the LDDA, is that this project be financially sustainable in the long term. And so the structure of the LDDA provides that there's a limit on how much funding can go into the construction of the project, because that has implications on long-term financial sustainability. So after the approval of the LDDA in September, two factors converged that caused us to revisit certain design aspects of the project. One is that construction costs had continued to rise through that point, and the second was that at that point in time, it started to become clear that COVID was going to be an ongoing thing that has lasting changes that relate to commercial real estate. And so with those two factors, we worked with our partner to relook at the design to see if there was a way to value engineer to get this within the cap of funding that we have available for the project. And that led to some design changes. One thing led to another that led to a rethinking of the project layout, and Miru and ODI will go into specifically those changes, but one of the larger ones was the removal of the cafe space, and in particular, the enclosed dining space that was in the previous proposal. These changes are a departure from the design previously, and because the LDDA includes the prior approvals as part of the document, And because these changes are substantive enough to require review by the Planning Commission, we will need to go through this process of having you all look at this for its conformance to the general plan and zoning. And then we will be going to the City Council with an amendment to the LDBA to memorialize that. So we have been working with ODI on these changes, with the city and representing the city's proprietary interest in the property as owner, and as the major partner in the funding. And though the finances of the project are beyond the purview of the Planning Commission, I wanted you to understand why in this instance we were bringing forward some changes as a result of value engineering. Miru will now go through the staff report and outline those changes, and then ODI is here with a brief presentation following her remarks. And so that's all I had, and I'll send it back to Miru.
Thank you, Chad. So I'll launch straight into the various changes. Essentially, there are 5. I'll first talk about sidewalk and trees, then signage, floor plan changes, which ODI will further drill into. I will just be providing briefly, and then some deletions and some new features. So sidewalk and trees. The 4 existing trees on Hollis Street will now be preserved, and the only improvement to the sidewalk will be the removal of existing curb cuts and replacement of new curb and gutter. If you recall, this was what was previously approved, removal of the 4 trees, and then construction of a new compliant sidewalk with which a 12.5-foot sidewalk with a planting strip and trees. So what is now being proposed is that these trees will remain, and the curb cuts that are shown here will be demolished and replaced. 1 tree on Hollis on 40th Street, which was removed in the earlier approval, is still being removed. So this is what the proposal will be looking like. So these are the existing trees, and the landscaping around the 40th Street is also similar. The sidewalk in the previously approved plan was not changing, and it is not changing in the modified proposal as well. The big change here on this side is, and I'll show you the previously approved sidewalk section. So essentially, there was a decomposite granite pathway which would be fronting the drill box. That is now not being proposed. Otherwise, you do have the landscaping, and the sidewalk remains as it was. In terms of signage, previously there were 3 signs that were proposed. Now there are 2 signs. And these 2 graphics kind of show you the location of what is being proposed and what was previously approved. As you can see, there is a wraparound sign along Hollis Street, and then there is a sign fronting the parking lot. And the reason for the change in signage is to do with the location of entrance and exits of the site. So let's look at the proposed sign. So this is the Hollis Street elevation. That's the wraparound sign. And then at the bottom is the north elevation, which faces City Hall. And this is the elevation this is the sign on the parking lot side. In terms of what was previously approved, this was the signage on Hollis Street, and this has changed mainly because Hollis Street is no longer the main entry to the building. And this on the top is the sign facing the parking lot, and this was the 3rd sign on the 40th Street side, which is no longer being proposed. In terms of floor plan, the relocation of the entrance and exits has been done such that the forum and the gallery space exit immediately out of the building towards the plaza in front of the City Hall to the north. There is a substantial increase in co-working space. You can see the numbers on the slide. There's an increase in studios from 18 to 23. There is a minor increase in forum size, and there is a reduction in the multipurpose gallery space. So this was the previously approved floor plan. We have Hollis Street at the bottom, 40th on the right, parking lot on the top of the screen, and this is the north side which fronts City Hall. So as Chad had mentioned, the cafe is no longer being proposed, and neither is the extension that was previously approved. Along with that, the cafe supporting space, kitchen and bar, these are also now removed. But the main change is the entrance was through Hollis, and that is now relocated to the north side, and I will be showing you that floor plan in a minute. And then relocation of the multipurpose gallery and the forum towards the north, and the co-working space would be towards the south. So to show this is the proposed. As you can see, the co-working space is shifted towards 40th Street, and the forum and the multipurpose area is towards the City Hall side, allowing easy exit of exit to those plaza area. In terms of the studios continue to line Hollis Street frontage as well as at the far end, and a few have been increased in the middle of the building. In addition, in lieu or in absent of the cafe space, what is being now proposed is an outdoor gallery space. And Orton ODI will talk a little bit more about that and how that is supposed to be functional. So as I mentioned, what is removed from design is cafe, the cafe nights, and the Hollis Street entrance. And the new features are the outdoor gallery and the urban art wall on the east elevation facing the parking lot. And you'll see that in the elevations momentarily. So this was what was approved. The way to read this at the bottom is the existing conditions. The middle kind of in the red shows what is being demolished. And then on the top is the proposed elevation. So this was the Hollis Street. As you can see, the entrance was along the Hollis Street, and this is the cafe addition. What is now with the modifications, the Hollis Street elevation is going to look like this. So at the bottom is the existing conditions. You can see in the middle what is going to be demolished. And then what you see is that this face does not change, and the entrance is, you'll see it on the north elevation. So the 40th Street elevation, the drill box, the key feature of the Art Center, this was previously approved. Not too much change to this elevation. The drill box remains. And as mentioned before, the only change is the decomposite granite pathway fronting drill box, which is no longer being proposed. This is the parking lot elevation that was previously approved, and this is the proposed elevation. As you can see, this is the urban art wall that would be the new feature, and there's also an entrance here. This is the north elevation, the one that faces City Hall, that was previously approved. And this is the proposed. So the big change here is that the entrance to the building will be located here. Although it's not shown, the green wall is proposed as before. So you would see these walls with plants. And you can see this sign here as well. So in terms of compliance with the planning regulations, none of the modifications change its compliance. It falls in the public zone. The use remains the same. It falls under what is classified as community assembly large, and therefore it requires a major use permit, and that's why it's in front of the commission. In terms of height and floor area, the footprint is not changing, the height is not changing, and both the FAR and the height falls within the base FAR and the base height in this district. The parking has changed slightly in terms of the change in uses. The required range is now 0 to 117 spaces. The parking lot spaces, as earlier, there are 64, and that will be shared by both the Arts Center and city offices. Traffic study was done, and a number of measures were identified, including a TDM plan, and these continue to remain as conditions of approval as they were in the previous approval. The project complies with the bicycle parking in terms of providing bike lockers as well as short-term bicycle spaces. This is a significant structure, and the significant elements of the building include contrasting concrete lintel over door and 2 windows, industrial windows with concrete caps, relief in brickwork. All this continues in terms of being preserved and or enhanced. In terms of design review, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps that this falls under the pedestrian priority zone, and where the sidewalks calls for a 12-foot sidewalk corridor with 8-foot pedestrian pathway and 4 feet of landscaping zone. As I mentioned earlier, on the Hollis Street, the existing sidewalk that varies from 6 to 11 feet will remain unchanged. As the proposal will not result in an increase of the non-conforming situation, this is acceptable. On the 40th Street frontage, the existing 6-foot sidewalk will remain unchanged as in the previous approval. And given that this is an adaptive reuse of the building and the need to have a loading ramp, it is not possible to meet the sidewalk dimensions as recommended in the PPP zone. This also falls on the Park Avenue district, and it complies with the various policies in terms of readapting an existing Tier 2 building, providing a cultural arts center, which was envisioned in the Park Avenue district for a permanent home for annual celebration of the art and exhibition. In terms of urban design guidelines, the project continues to comply with various guidelines regarding landscaping, preserving and enhancing historical industrial warehouse characters through adaptive reuse, and retaining window design and proportions to add some interest. So the findings that need to be made are the general conditional use permit findings for preservation or reuse of a significant structure, general design review findings, and major design review findings for signs. Staff believes that these findings can be made and they have been outlined in the staff report and the resolution. The project continues to remain exempt under CEQA guidelines, which apply to existing facilities and to infill development projects. So our recommendation is that the Commission approve the proposed modifications subject to the project conditions of approval attached to the staff report. So that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any question, and ODI does have a presentation for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mara. Are there any questions at this time from any commissioners? Clarifying questions? Commissioner Keller?
I was wondering if you could tell me what groups, committees, or boards have reviewed the change in these plans before it came before the Planning Commission?
None.
Okay. And how much, and I don't know that you could answer this question, but how much of this new plan conforms to the original RFP that was put out to the public when Orton bid on this project? Was that also compared?
I'll look to Chad to respond to this.
Yeah, this revision is still responsive to the RFP that was issued.
And would you say that this RFP or that this program meets the public scrutiny that was asked for in the RFP when it hasn't been before any other boards at this time?
I mean, the project continues to have roughly the same program and palette of uses with roughly the same proportions that the prior version had. The main change is that they flipped from side to side, not sharing a lobby. which allows for independent operation of each end of the project. Prior version had some issues operationally, potentially, that were going to be challenging. We had studios that opened onto the gallery space, for example. That's no longer the case now. And so those functions all continue to exist, and the project continues to meet the overall objectives of providing a home for the celebration of the art, as well as demonstrating financial sustainability.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Commissioner. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Keller. Commissioner Chafe?
Thanks, Chair Thompson. I had a question about the sidewalks. Maru, could you just clarify what was proposed in terms of the sidewalk width and whether that's changed at all in the current proposal?
Yes. So the Hollis Street sidewalk was supposed to be changed. The trees were to be removed, and then a new sidewalk, which was 12.5-foot total sidewalk with a landscaping strip with new trees. In this modification, the trees will stay, and there will be no change to the sidewalk other than restoring the new, there are some existing curb cuts which will be restored.
Okay, great, thank you. And I don't know if this is a question for staff or for the applicants or the other presenters, but I have two questions about the changes. One about this, why the street trees are now being retained, and then also why the decomposed granite pathway is no longer there.
I believe there is a strong desire in the community for the trees to be preserved.
Yes.
And regarding, go ahead, Chad.
I just wanted to say the city council expressed when they approved the LDDA, a desire to retain those trees back in September.
And if I could just add to that, I mean, I think, which it's probably obvious, but leaving that sidewalk configuration as it is on Hollis Street is certainly less expensive than tearing out those trees, planting new trees, and creating a new sidewalk. So this whole exercise is about value engineering, which basically means saving money. And so not doing that change to the Hollis Street frontage is one way to save some money.
Okay, great. And then how about for the granite pathway? Was that also just primarily an economic decision?
You know, ODI will address that issue in more detail. They've been asked to do that.
And then I think before there was an outdoor gathering space by the entrance on Hollis. Is there still an outdoor gathering space of any kind? Because now it seems like there's an outdoor gallery, but I wasn't really clear if that's enough space for people to congregate or not.
I see it as the outdoor gallery being primarily the use for that space. So to the extent that people gather to see the artwork, to that extent, it will allow people to gather. But as such, in terms of programming, that space that was used to be, the cafe plus outdoor, that would be basically the outdoor gallery.
If I could add, although technically it's not part of the site of this project, the main entrance to the gallery and forum space will be from the what we call the garden behind City Hall. And we currently use that space for employee lunches and other things like that. And it's a very intimate and comfortable gathering space. So, and it's away from the street, fairly enclosed. In fact, it can be fully enclosed if you want to close the gates. So I would envision that as an outdoor gathering space for the Art Center, that from the main entrance, you can just spill out into that garden behind City Hall.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Chafe. Are there any other questions? I have a quick question, and it's probably for Chad. The question about construction costs, you noted them in the beginning as being an issue, and things changing over time, COVID happening. What is the current state of construction costs? Are they, because everything has changed.
They're worse than they were then. But it remains, we haven't gotten to bid this yet, but what we do know is that some of the cafe annex is an extraordinarily expensive piece of the project. This also, although it wasn't highlighted, changing the entries on the parking lot side, the east side of the parking lot, eliminated a lot of ramping and retaining walls that needed to be built in order to get into multiple access points from that side. So this helped by moving the entrances to each end and allowing those studios to be accessed from the co-working side. And then, as Charlie mentioned, the change to the street frontage is also a savings as well, because new street trees require significant over excavation to place structural soil, which makes that more involved than it might otherwise appear. So all of these things combined help, and the project is easier to build within this format. So we're hopeful that this time around bids will come in underneath our budget.
Okay, yeah, no, I guess my question was, I mean, I think you've clarified it by talking about the differences in the ramping and retaining walls as being a cost saver. But I think the other thing is I want to make sure that we have more detail when characterizing construction costs, because labor was a big issue now, materials are a big issue now, or was a big issue. So, but labor is not an issue as much, or it is in some cases where crews have disappeared. But I think that information just has to be articulated a little bit more as we talk about this, because we are going into a bid cycle. So thank you for getting at the beginning of that, and let's keep talking about it, I think is my comment.
And the city council will be doing a deep dive into that topic.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And Chair Thompson, if I could just clarify, that construction cost issue is not something that is within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction in terms of making the findings you need to make to approve these proposed modifications, but it is a important point of information for you.
Right, exactly. Okay, great. That answers my question. Commissioner Young, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question, Chad, or just basically in general the staff. Chad, it was mentioned that COVID is starting to be an effect on real estate and how that's actually being a kind of a dynamic direction that I think we're changing the views on how we're looking at this building or all buildings in Emeryville. Just I wanted to get a little input on that. What are you thinking about in those terms?
Well, I mean, I've only really thought about it as regards this building when we're talking about a project and, its leasability and what kinds of potential users are out there. It's my view, and I've seen some press to this effect, that co-working is something that's actually going to be more attractive to certain companies that are looking to hot desk in instead of securing dedicated office space for a large number of people. So that's something that we've kept an eye on. The cafe, the restaurants got hit hard in the city, and we didn't lose too many of them in terms of losing the spaces, but we did have several closures, and that sort of speaks to whether there's a viability to support another cafe here. But we're definitely seeing changes across the city's real estate landscape. You see it in the very strong support for life science space, and there's significant vacancy in the traditional office towers at the moment. So that's part of what you all are seeing in these projects that come through, in these conversions in particular.
Thank you.
Sorry, sirens outside. Any other questions? Okay, and so ODI does have a presentation? All right, then I'd like to ask them to present.
I will be promoting them to panelists now, so they can make their presentations. Here we go. Okay. So we have Nick and Eddie Orton and Steve Schwartz.
Hey everybody, sorry, I was on mute there for a sec. Can people hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So thank you so much to Chad and Maru for the introduction, and thank you to the Planning Commission for hearing our item. My name is Nick Horton, and I'm here with my dad, Eddie, and we are delighted to present the redesign of the Emeryville Arts Center. We are an Emeryville company, and we know how important a project this is for our community. We know how long the community has been waiting for this project to become a reality, and we know how transformative it can be. And we're taking the responsibility of reopening it with the utmost seriousness. We did not come to the decision of changing the plan lightly. Obviously, we had an approved design, but as we dug deeper into the old design, as we talked more to our engineers and lead experts, and as we reviewed our prior correspondence with the community, we became more and more convinced that a better design was out there. So it wasn't an easy decision to change the design, but the driving factor was the long-term sustainability of the project. So COVID, as Chad mentioned, was a big driver in terms of changing the design. We think the impacts of COVID are going to reverberate far after the pandemic ends. There's going to be more demand for outdoor space, and event spaces and workspaces are going to require more flexibility. So we started thinking the forum would be primarily or almost solely a performing arts space, but as more companies give up their meeting spaces, there's going to be more demand for flexible event spaces that can function in a wide variety of setups. We wanted to make sure the new design met our LEED Gold standard, which is part of our LDDA agreement. We were concerned that the prior jewel box design was going to require additional conditioning and cooling that would make it difficult to meet that standard. And obviously we were concerned about spending money needlessly, having a large retaining wall along the east facade that didn't necessarily get us additional square footage or greater use out of the square footage that we had. So when we started the redesign process, we looked back at the record. We went back to the Planning Commission study session from February 2019, and we looked back at our meeting notes from meetings with artists and other stakeholders in Emeryville. And through that process, we learned that the old design met some of the requirements and the input that we received from the community, but didn't do as good of a job as we thought we could do in terms of meeting those requirements. So Sharon Wiltshire, the wonderful head of the Celebration of the Arts for many years, was very clear that she needed support space for the celebration, storage space, green room, etc. There was a lot of concern about the main entrance being along Hollis Street, where cars couldn't drop off. And there was a big concern that the operation of the Arts Center wasn't going to be sustainable. Everyone we talked to wanted to make sure that this was something that was in Emeryville for decades to come. And people really wanted the building to connect to City Hall. We feel our new design better satisfies those conditions. The gallery has more support space and the forum has more support space. There's a lobby that connects the building to the City Hall through the shared plaza that allows us to have simultaneous events in our building and in City Hall. And there's a lobby that enters both the gallery and forum space directly. The main commercial entrance moves to the south side, and this allows us to operate the events portion of the building and the commercial portion of the building independently. So if there's a late night event, we can close down the co-working space, have this space be accessible through this north entrance, and have the co-working space be secured, and vice versa. If you're an artist and you want to work late at night, you'll have key card access through this entrance, and you'll be able to access your studios over here with the forum and the gallery still being secured. We really felt it made sense along Hollis Street to make it clear to people that this was an arts building. And that was the genesis of the outdoor gallery space, and we think it can function both in conjunction with the main gallery and forum space and as its own independent space. Obviously, we added some support space here and some storage here. And we maintained exiting along all four sides of the building. Another nice thing about this design is these hallways have very limited interruptions and very limited doors, and so they can be used in conjunction with the gallery and the forum to display art for events such as the celebration. This is the overlay of the old design. I won't belabor this too much since Maru went through the old design in detail. The main entrances in the old design came from the east and west. They funneled everyone who visited through the building to this one main space, and from here you would go to the gallery and then to the forum like that. We felt the new design, which basically has two entrances, one for the commercial side and one for the event side, made a lot more sense. This is the path of travel. So even though the two halves of the building can operate independently, the building still connects. There are no dead-end hallways, and it's easy to find an exit no matter where you are in the building, whether it be on the north, west, south, or east. I wanted to do a square footage comparison of the original design and the proposed design. So as Maru pointed out, the main gallery space is smaller, but the forum space is bigger. There's an outdoor gallery space, and there are adjacent hallways where art can be displayed. So the total amount of space where art can be displayed is actually about the same size as the old design. And the amount of lineal feet where art can be displayed is much greater because the exiting is better. So we can put more interior walls in the gallery space without having concern that there are going to be exiting issues, in the case of a fire. When you add in the support spaces, the total amount of space dedicated to an event like the celebration is actually slightly bigger than the old design. There's also more commercial space, both art studios and co-working conference space. And I wanted to make clear that we see the art studios and the co-working space as complementing one another. We see our typical co-working user as being an artist, and all of our arts studio users will have access to all of the co-working amenities, the meeting rooms, the mailboxes, the break area with the kitchenette. And we think that our typical co-working user is going to be someone who wants to be in an arts building surrounded by art. The space is more efficient, especially when you factor in that a lot of the circulation space can be used for art display. And so factoring that in, we have a massive efficiency gain from the old design. I'm going to go quickly through the elevations because Maru went through all of them. The north facade, the changes are fairly minor. Because this becomes more of a main entrance, we created more of a storefront entrance here. The green wall and the water fountain are being retained. On the west elevation, we're planning on retaining the juniper trees. That was just based on feedback from the community. We felt like the clear majority wanted those trees to be maintained. ODI is agnostic on whether those trees are maintained or not. It does cost some additional money to bring the site into compliance with the Hollis Street improvement plan, but it's not so much money that we're completely willing that we're not willing to do it if that's what the planning commission prefers. But the feedback we got is that people prefer that the juniper trees remain. On the east elevation, we were able to get rid of most of the retaining wall while still maintaining an entrance into the commercial space, and obviously we added the urban art wall. And then on the south elevation, the main change is the removage of the sign. Our feeling on the signage is the fact that the building as an art center should be self-evident. We feel like the jewel box and the art display and then the additional outdoor gallery space along Hollis Street will make that self-evident to passersby. But again, we're open to a conversation on that if the planning commission disagrees. So to quickly summarize the design changes, the primary entrance moved from the west where cars can't drop off to the north where there's adjacency to City Hall. The forum and gallery have more direct entrances. we were able to add additional studios and co-working space. We were able to create a more flexible design that allows for a wider variety of events. And we feel the operations are sustainable long-term because the event space and the commercial space can operate independently from one another. I wanted to preemptively address some public comments that we got in advance of the meeting, just in case we don't have a chance to address them later. As discussed, the space for the celebration, that's dedicated gallery space, is smaller, but the amount of space where art can be displayed is actually greater, especially when you factor in the improved exiting, which allows more linear square feet of art to be displayed. The co-working space is meant to be art serving, it's meant to be complementary of the arts, and our art studios users will have full access to the co-working space. Obviously, we have a 30,000 square foot building, we're square footage constrained, we would like there to be more storage, but the idea behind the gallery operation is it was always meant to be very lean. It was not meant to require on-site administrative offices. And we feel the new plan does a good job of using the square footage we have as best as it possibly can. We agree with the comment that 2 of the parking spaces in the lot will need to be reserved during designated hours for loading. And as discussed, we feel the community supports the juniper trees be retained, even though we're fairly agnostic on that issue. So with that, my dad and I would like to open it up to questions. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so that was a great presentation. Are there any questions, clarification questions from the commission at this time? Commissioner Mendez.
Yeah, I had a question about the forum and the multi-purpose gallery. Are those 2 spaces able to open up to each other to make it a larger space? If like a larger event was going to happen?
We have code compliant connection between the 2. We actually proposed a barn door between them, but it wasn't code, so we had to take that out. So, but we have code compliant connection between the 2.
And was this, maybe this is a question for Mira, but was that because of the fire code or?
Well, I think it was the fire code. Yeah.
It was fire code, okay. And I think that's my only clarifying question I have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mendez. Any additional questions? Commissioner Shape?
Thank you. Sorry if I missed it. Did you discuss the decomposed granite path in front of the jewel box on 40th?
Yeah, that's a ramp, and the access to the jewel box for putting in art is from the outside.
Okay. And so what will the pedestrian experience be like there now in the proposed new plan?
Pretty identical to the way it was before. It'll be the art in the jewel box that probably will be, just, a little oblique towards the bus stop. It'd be like the coolest bus stop in history.
That's gonna go in the record. I had one more question about the co-working space. So I don't think we've looked at the plans in detail for the co-working space today. I was wondering if there's like a dedicated space for taking phone calls, or if it's literally just like an open room with desks in it, or if that hasn't been determined yet.
Yeah, there will be dedicated spaces for taking phone calls. I'm not sure if the version that has the phone booths made it into our design because it can look a little cluttered. But the short answer is yes, there's going to be dedicated spaces for phone calls.
Okay, and is there any sort of economic analysis available or thoughts that you can share with us about why co-working is a better economic bet than the cafe space? And I'm asking this because I think, that's the reason that's been given for a lot of the change today. So I was just wondering if you could give us a bit more detail on that thinking.
What? You want me to take? Yeah. So I think there's just more risk associated with the cafe space, just given the uncertainty in the restaurant industry right now. Design was one of the main drivers for us getting rid of the cafe space. When we relocated the gallery, it just didn't work to have the cafe in that same Hollow Street location with the cafe annex space. So in terms of, rent, if we were able to rent the cafe space, I'm not sure if the total revenue would necessarily be any less. But when we looked back at the record, there weren't a lot of people really clamoring for additional restaurant and cafe space. What we've seen since the outbreak of COVID is increased remote working, increased people going in on a as needed basis into the office or going in a few days a week. And, places that have, are emerging in sort of a post-COVID environment have seen a massive increase in demand for co-working space. And, we anticipate that to be a long-term change as companies continue to, let their employees go into the office on kind of an as-needed basis.
Thank you. And just one more question related to that. Has the ventilation plan for the building changed at all, given the learnings from COVID?
It's changed entirely. We individualized the HVAC because of that concern. We redesigned it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Keller?
I have a couple clarifying questions on that. So on the HVAC, are you talking about that you're going to use 100% outside air? Will any of the building be using recirculating air?
We are bringing in, for ventilation, we are bringing in fresh air through a single duct into the things, and then they're vented individually, and they have an individual fan as well.
Okay, but not recirculating anything?
Correct.
Okay, and then just to clarify the jewel boxes, I think Commissioner Chafe, I didn't hear the answer. The idea of that crushed granite pathway was to allow people to walk up and see the jewel box. With that being removed, the only visible means is from the sidewalk bus stop area to the jewel box between the planter bed. Is that correct? There'll be no way to approach the actual jewel box and look in there.
Well, I mean, I think the ramp is like 3 feet wide. Right, and I'm not sure exactly how wide it is, but 3 feet.
The ramp delivers into the doors of the building, correct?
Into the.
Okay, so the DG pathway was designed in front of the jewel box so people could leave the sidewalk and walk up to the jewel box and look in the window. With that being gone, there's going to be no way to do that, correct?
No, you're just 3 feet away, right? Instead of right next to it. I'm not sure there's any, because I mean, you don't walk within 1 or 2 inches of something. You're going to be just 3 feet off of it, right? The ramp is 3 feet. I might have 3 or 4 feet or something. I don't know.
Okay, so there is a ramp that's going up. It just doesn't connect to the sidewalk or the corner like the previous one did. Okay. I'm looking at both plans. Yeah, that's what it appears. So there is a way to actually walk up to the jewel box itself.
Yeah.
And not have to look at it from the sidewalk on Poya Street. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Keller. I have a question about the trees themselves. I know there's been the comment about the community. I mean, I certainly know that the city council has been very interested in preserving mature trees. Have there been other community comments or a community meeting where you've heard these comments? I'm just was wondering what other venues.
Well, obviously we have a record of community comments. One of the things that we did was comb. And then the thing about trees is you can always kill them, but once you've done it, there's no going back. So to us, it'd be like, I think we can do something very, very nice there with art and trees. And we're just not big tree killers, tree assassins. We're just let them live, But
right. Yeah, and I think I had recalled, and I don't know if this is true or not, that there was an arborist report that didn't give them a lot of health credits, and that was a consideration of ours. Maru, maybe you can answer that. Was that true in the last approval?
Yes, we did have an arborist report in the last approval, which did outline that the health of these trees were, they're from medium to poor.
Okay, and I don't think it was. I don't think it was just that. I think there was a whole conversation around the sidewalk reconstruction as well. So it was a more complex conversation. So just for clarifying questions, I wanted to ask about the gallery on Hollis. It was mentioned that you moved the entrance to the north because there were some concerns about an entrance on Hollis. Are there any of those same concerns about a gallery, and even if it's outdoors on Hollis? How do you see that working?
Well, I think the big question on this whole building with the art wall and with this gallery is whether we can really bring the community in to own this, and that community will protect the gallery. The big risk of the gallery, of course, staff pointed out, and we, have said that we would face, is that the art becomes defaced, right? That's the big concern there if we leave something there overnight. So we're gonna, obviously these things have to be organically brought into the city, but we think in Emeryville that we know we can put public art on the outside of this building and it'll be fine. But we have to kind of grow it. And we're still working on that.
Okay, all right, thank you. And are there any other questions? Commissioner Mendez?
Yeah, I had one more question regarding the jewel box, just a clarifying question. So the public would be able to go up that ramp and through the sliding door to access the jewel box?
No, there would be a little chain that said don't go up the ramp. No, the ramp is for bringing art up into the jewel box.
Okay, so there would be no public activity inside the jewel box at all. It would just be like pieces of art.
Pieces of art, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Vice Chair Young, did you have a question or?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit more sensibility on some of that signage. I mean, you take the sign off of the main part of the visibility, and you leave the one facing City Hall that already knows that that's an art building, and then you leave one on a kind of a minor street. And I know it's kind of thought about, well, can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on why that was removed?
So I think the one is shown in the corner. So you still see that sort of a very cool way in Hollis. And then one of the things about the signage is, we're not real sign people. We're people who like our work to say what we're doing without a whole lot more information. So we tend to understate the signs. But I think we have a very cool sign on the corner, and I think we have enough signage that people, as you said, and then in terms of the one on the North Plaza, yeah, everybody in City Hall knows where it is. But if you're parking in the parking lot, you come down that ramp, first time, you may not know where it is.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If there are no more, I'll move on to the.
I have a brief question.
Sorry. Yep. Commissioner Simon, go ahead.
Can you talk about the difference between a studio space and a co-working space? I think a concern of mine is sort of project drift over time, like, the revenue is a little low, let's turn this art space into another office for a business. And I just want to make sure we're locking in artists as long as possible. Can you talk about the difference between those rooms?
My dad can speak to the design. We do have a LVDA requirement that a certain percentage of the overall space of the building be dedicated to the arts. and then you want to take the question on the
Yeah, I
design.
mean, we have two kinds of studios. We have dark studios for light and animation and people like that, and then we have painting studios and sculpture studios. They basically have a concrete floor. The best natural. We're really focused. If there's painting, obviously, on those, we're really focused on the natural light and making sure we can have that an artist can have really good light. We tend to go really it's a concrete floor with sealer. It's got white walls. It's got one coat of primer and go to it. And again, with the big focus on the light, the ventilation, especially because artists use various products. And then a co-working thing is really, to me, so I think that in the Bay Area, there really isn't any place for the sort of the business of art. And I think that you could have people like dealers and people who want to be in the art business, people who are supplying artists, people who are agents, people like that. And so if you were like, say that you lived in Sonoma and you were an art dealer, but you really only needed to meet people once or twice a month, you'd come down here, get a desk, and then. So the idea is that it's really a co-working space, and we think like Chad, that co-working has a bright future, but we think themed co-working has a stellar future.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So I'm going to move on to the public comment for this. Now is the time for the public hearing on this item. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to this item should have begun submittal of your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, please use *9 and the clerk will call on you at the appropriate time. So Charlie, have any comments been received by online comment card, and or has anyone raised their hand to make audio comments?
I do not see any online comment cards, but I do see one raised hand. So just to clarify, you are opening the public hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Nancy Karp has got her hand raised, and I will ask her now to unmute. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much, and this is really great clarifications. I'll just identify who I am. Nancy Karp, I'm a choreographer. I've been living and working in Emeryville at the Emeryville Artist Co-op for 40 years, and I was in on some of the early meetings for this building, and it's a real exciting moment that we've reached so far. I do have some questions for maybe people in the city as well as Eddie and Nick. I'll go real quick because I know you don't want to hear this forever. Let's see. I do have a concern, and I know it's economic, of the elimination of the cafe. And I know the restaurant situation is here now, difficult. But we do know across the street from the co-op, we're going to be having hundreds and hundreds of new residents within walking distance to this building. And we have been sorely missing something that since the time of Carrera's, for any of you who remember that on Powell Street. And if you deem it necessary to eliminate this cafe, I would really encourage you to at least stub out for the future the possibility of a cafe, of somewhere that might be possible to think, if possible, to think about a future kitchen somewhere different than just the kitchen for the co-working space. So that's just a thought, because it's a lot easier to stub something out now rather than an afterthought. Another thought I just had a question for Eddie and Nick, just because I look forward to being able to have my dance company perform in that forum. And It would be so great instead of having to go to the city to always perform. Do you have, I couldn't see on the plans, and maybe it's my own lack of understanding the plans, the height of the forum?
We should allow the speaker to conclude her comments and not use part of her 3 minutes for answering questions. The answers can come later. Okay, so that's a question.
Sure. The height of the forum.
The height of the forum. And let me just see if I have anything else. If you could talk a little bit more, and you don't, this is another question. What exactly is the urban art wall? I'm sorry, I was out of the loop on what that design feature is about. And yes, and I guess my only concern was the reduction. I think it's probably, sounds like a done deal, but a reduction of the gallery space was kind of a shock, and to see more of the income area space coming in, but I totally understand. We want this building to stand and be functional for a long time. Okay, I'm finished. Oh, whoops. I'm sorry.
That was exactly 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So Charlie, do you want to have those questions answered at this time?
That's up to you. Not sure.
Yeah, just while they're fresh, the height of the forum, maybe Nick or Eddie could answer that.
Yeah, I think I want to say the height, the clear height of the forum is about 10 or 11 feet. It is right in there. So when we moved the forum, you know, we're somewhat limited to the height, but I think it's about 10, 11 feet clear. Okay. And then the step out, I can tell you, you know, we have shared that thought that you mentioned. Okay. That has occurred to us. Okay. On the step out.
Yeah, and the other key question was just any quick thoughts about the urban art wall.
So the urban art wall, so I have dealt with a lot of graffiti in my career. And the centrality of that art form to urban life is incredibly important. And I think Emeryville is the kind of community that can get into this and provide the taggers, you know, a place where they are a part of this. So there's some level, there's some risk in it. Another level, you know, it's, you just, if it turns out terrible, you just paint over it. But that's the idea, is that we are going to give part of this thing to people, kids, young people, who often don't feel part of the institutional art process.
Okay, thank you. So we're still open for comments. Are there other commenters, Charlie?
I have no.
By the way, there was one more on that, which was reduction of the art space. Now, it's really important to understand that that is not true. We did things like we put the doors of the bathrooms on an interior hallway, so that the hallways could all display art. One of the things about the old design, the old gallery double functioned as an exit hallway, and it severely limited the amount of kind of even temporary walls you could put into that gallery, because you cannot obstruct one end of an exit hallway from another. So this is way, from a gallery point of view, it is way more functional. And then when you throw in this incredible capacity to go indoor, outdoor, it's really, really, way, way, way better. So I just want to say that this square footage, vertical square footage of areas to show art, we're way ahead.
Okay, thank you. Any other commenters?
I do not. Let me check my email one last time. I do not have any online speaker cards. And I do not see any further raised hands among the attendees.
Okay. Hearing no additional requests to make comments, the public hearing portion of this item is now closed. Okay, I'm going to bring this item back for deliberation to the commission. Is there a commissioner who'd like to speak first on it? Actually, I'm going to call on people. How about...
First of all, Chair, does Charlie want to demote Speaker Nancy Carr?
Good question.
You know, I'm sorry, I can't really do that. She still shows up on my attendee list. This happens when I allow people to speak. They end up showing up on the screen, and frankly, I don't know how to remove them. Sorry.
All right, so Commissioner Keller, why don't I have you go first? We're in deliberation officially.
Okay, you may be sorry that you asked, but it's going to be long-winded as usual.
There we go, I did it.
So first of all, I do want to appreciate and respect the hardship that we're going through, trying to make this building work and make it profitable so it stays around for a long time. I'm glad we don't have to consider the economics as part of our deliberation and job here. Though I do understand the cost of building things now. So what I'm wondering if maybe we're being a little penny wise and pound foolish in making these changes, and maybe we should put this on the back burner because, as Chair Thompson said, labor costs most likely are going down. As soon as the lumber mills get back up to speed, we know they were shut down over COVID. They weren't ready for the immediate impact of business going on as quickly as it did. So maybe, in 6 months, a year's time, we could, see a reduction in those costs. But I think what we're doing here is kind of penny wise and pound foolish. Overall, what I'm seeing here is no longer a center for community or a center for art, but we're looking at a we work with art. And I think we're being, and I don't want to say sold a bill of goods because I don't think Orton has ill intentions. I think they're just trying to make this work. But I think we're putting lipstick on a pig to make things look right. So first of all, I think the Hollis Street side is deplorable. I think it looks no different than what we have now. Putting art on the sidewalk and calling it a gallery does not, suffice on what we're doing there. The entrance and the way that was created with the cafe, if the cafe is there or not, it's indifferent. That was an entrance that you could see from Hollis Street. The courtyard was always accessible. So selling it to us as the entry is now being a point that didn't exist before is not true. You could always access it from the cafe, so that is not a new benefit. Saying that moving the door off of Hollis is not going to promote people from pulling up at the curb and dropping people off is not true. The door is right off the gate, which is right off of Hollis. That's still going to happen. But the main thing I want to get after is the gallery space is lost. Calling hallways gallery or exhibition space is not true. Especially if any of us have been to the Celebration of the Arts, the opening night, you can't even get to the exhibitions. And in a hallway, they're going to be totally impassable. So calling a hallway a gallery space is not, in my opinion, and having someone who's owned a gallery, this isn't true. You can pass by and use it to hang art, but it is not display space. And I don't know a artist that's going to want to have their art displayed in that space. You can't stand back far enough to enjoy it. So yeah, it's functional and usable, but is it gallery space? No, it is not. Losing the connection between the gallery and the jewel box, that is like petting off your nose to spite your face. The jewel box is called the jewel box because it was the jewel box and it was connected to the gallery. And you could go from the gallery into the jewel box. That thing was dynamic. It's what made this building work. Now it's just part of the WeWork workstations. So I don't think that that we're anywhere near what we were in the beginning. And again, I understand what we're looking for. If we're going to base things on the corona pandemic, and if that's what we're going to base things on, we might as well not open this. I think a cafe space can function as a co-working space. Everyone I know has been dying to go to restaurants because corona, we lost restaurants, but our anticipation and hope is that restaurants will be open again. And everyone I talk to, my dentist, they all want to go out and dine and be with friends and be with people. So yeah, the coronavirus killed eating establishments. There's no doubt about that. But if we're going to base our whole business model and everything on sheltering in place or making everything separate from everything else, we might as well not open this space. And losing the connection of the forum with the gallery, being able to open those spaces together, we're at a major loss here. And we're talking about saving money. I don't understand why we went from a gender inclusive bathroom to now we're using 2 bathrooms again, which is more expensive. And then I want to address the whole trees on Hollis and et cetera. Again, I think we're being asked to look at this as a benefit when it's really just a cost saving device. The discussion that we had as a commission, I can't say what happened before or after, the discussion was those juniper trees are towards the end of their lives. They are not really of a lot of value. The value was the fact that we were going to make our sidewalks compliant, not only just for the gallery, but for the city. For a person who walks around the city, I want wider sidewalks. The thing about cutting down those trees and putting the trees on the sidewalk is you get healthier, bigger, longer lasting trees, and trees become a buffer between the traffic and the pedestrians. So there's a lot more here in that street than just the facade for the Arts Center. This is making our city better overall. So I think that in any building that is spending this kind of money, we would require that they make the sidewalks compliant. And I think this job, if nothing else, we have to make the sidewalks on Hollis Street compliant with current code. That's our responsibility. And because we don't have to look at this as an economic thing, we have to look at it as following the general plan and the city guidelines. That sidewalk needs to be approved and needs to follow the city guidelines. The signage I don't find appealing at all. I think like Vice Chair Young brought up, the main feature on 40th Street, which people are going to see, is that section. So I think if you're going to wrap a sign and limit the signs, that sign that says Emeryville Arts Center should be on that corner and not on the entry corner. And I understand the one from the parking lot identifies from the parking lot or what it is. I understand its importance, but if you're going to reduce it to 2 signs, the sign needs to be at Hollis and 40th Street, not tucked around the corner behind City Hall and then along Hollis Street. To me, the thing is, this is supposed to be designed as an art center for performing arts and for visual arts. And I like the idea of the tie-in of WeWorks or the Work Center being marketed towards the arts. But I agree with Commissioner Simons that I'd like to know that those studio galleries, because you're calling the workspace artist focused, I'm afraid I could see you say, well, this studio next to it, we're going to make this an art focused meeting room or something like that. I think the studio space, as designed as studio space and enclosed as studio space, should always retain as an artist studio space and not be co-opted into any type of shared office space or etc. So I'll try to be as quick as I can on this. I get my page to turn here. I'm kind of addressing the 4 points that we had. And I understand if we don't do a cafe, I think something needs to be installed by the way of at least a galley kitchen so that we can do some catering for events there, particularly the Emeryville art program. But anytime someone wants to have a gallery opening or something, I think there needs to be a sink, an island or something that the catering company can use to produce the necessary space to do the catering. And yeah, for now, I think that kind of wraps up enough without going on a major tirade or tangent. But I hope I clarified the fact that I think that what was sold to us or explained to us as benefits either already existed or actually are not benefits to the Arts Center or to the city at large. Thank you. Chair Thompson, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Commissioner Keller. Commissioner Mendez.
Thank you, Chair Thompson, and thank you to the presenters for bringing this to us. And so I'd like to kind of echo a lot of what Commissioner Keller stated. I'll start with the jewel box. For me right now, the jewel box with this design feels like it's completely separate from the project. It just feels like it was kind of just slapped on even though it's part of the building right now, just the way the new design, it just feels like it's slapped onto the exterior of the building. It doesn't connect to anything on the interior. People can't access it. They can't come close to it. At the very least, I would like to see the path retained, even at the corner where the ramp isn't located there. And so at least people can come up close to it. It almost feels like an inaccessible space for the public, where, you know, the Emeryville Art Center is for the public. And so I feel like there was a really miss right there for that jewel box. And also that nobody can really access the art on the inside. You just kind of look at it from afar, and you can't go inside, walk through it, experience the space. You know, sometimes there's artwork that's experiential, and it's not too much to look at it, but it's kind of to interact with it as well. And you lose that opportunity by taking away the public access to that jewel box. And so another point I wanted to make is that the connection between the forum and the multi-purpose room is a really missed opportunity. I understand that there's fire codes that we have to maintain, but there are ways around that. You could use wand doors, which are fire-rated sliding doors that are activated once the fire alarm is activated. You could also have double doors that are on automatic hold open, and so that will still allow a connection between the forum and the multi-purpose room, so that we can create a larger space when needed and still meet the fire code requirements. So I would like for you to maybe reconsider that and try to figure out how to connect those two spaces to make it into a larger space when we do have larger community events happening there. And then also I wanted to, if the outdoor gallery and the multi-purpose room is supposed to be a connected space, a fluid space, why not add another door? Right now there's just one single double door going into the outdoor gallery. And so I feel like the connection's not really there between that space and the multi-purpose room. So maybe adding more openings in and out of the outdoor space and the multi-purpose gallery. Also the main entrance, moving it to where you have it now between the city hall, it's a very hidden space, very hidden for someone who is not familiar with this area, with the city, to know that they have to turn the corner, go down halfway, and then go into the main entrance. It's also not, there's no sign outside of that main entrance to identify it as a public entrance. And so somebody, if we're trying to cater to the public, that's really not an inviting space, I don't feel like. Maybe it could have been better if you entered it through the outdoor gallery. So then it forces people to come in through the outdoor gallery, experience the outdoor art, and then go into the multi-purpose gallery. And then the entrance would then be on a street that the public can clearly see. And then as far as the trees, I remember us talking about pulling the trees away from the building as a benefit, because it would bring the public closer to the building, which would mean it would bring them closer to the windows, into the studios. And so being able to look into people's studios to see what they're doing. If artists wanted to display things at their windows, that's kind of another public art that can happen along the sidewalk. And so my preference would be to have the trees pulled away from the building, if possible. But if they're right next to the building, I would say at the very least, we need to work on the connection into the jewel box a little bit better. And then I also agree with Commissioner Keller's comment on at least having kitchen space for catering. So for at least warming food, I can see this, the multi-purpose room being used a lot for events. And when there's events, there's food often. So I think we need a space for that. I think that's it for my comments right now. But other than that, I'm honestly really looking forward to this project. I'm very, very excited. So I want to make sure that we do right for our community, and that we basically do the best that we can for the public. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mendez. Commissioner Simons?
Excellent. Well, first, thank you so much for the presentation and for all the other great commissioner comments we've had so far. Obviously, I'm coming in very late to this project, and I know some of you have been working on this for years, including city staff, so thanks for all your hard work. Like a couple of other commissioners, I think I have some concerns. The joke about Harvard is a hedge fund that runs a small university on the side. And I'm worried that this is a project where this is a co-working space that runs a small center for the arts on the side, rather than a wonderful community center for the arts with a small co-working space tacked on. I also think co-working is very speculative. I think we have no idea how things are going to shake out, and it makes me a little nervous that, city government is taking a big risk around an industry we really don't know what's going to happen to. And I think one of the nice things about being the government is you let other people go borrow the money and see how it works. And us spending a bunch of money on this makes me nervous. So I think my thought would be, well, if this doesn't work right now, a lot of these prices we know are going to go down in a year or two, or seems like they're likely to, as industries spin back up, and it would be better just to wait to get closer to what we all know that we want in this facility, which I think obviously people have identified a number of concerns. I think I'll just list a couple of concerns that I have. I agree the gallery space in the hallway is just not that great. I've been to the arts event, particularly on opening night, and it's incredibly crowded. I also think the lack of entrance on Hollis is a problem. I also think as far as I can tell, the co-working entrance on 40th Street seems very, very unappealing to me. All those blocks are like pretty bleak with very fast cars, and I guess eventually we're going to slow them down, bus lane. But I think it's still always going to be sort of a fast, busy street, which isn't going to be that nice if you're a person walking into this fancy, hip co-working place. I also agree that having the entrance to the facility be off the garden is not that great. I think we want to be celebrating and trying to pull people in off the street as they walk by, and this entrance won't really do that. I'm agnostic on the trees. I think generally I'm very pro-tree, and we should be planting as many of them as possible, but it's not, as long as they're being replaced, that often seems fine to me. I don't think these trees are that great, and I'd be fine replacing them with more appropriate trees. I think just generally my major comment is it feels like we're trying to just barely make something happen. It's just sort of going to satisfy most of us with a big speculative bet to sort of make the whole thing work, which seems like maybe a decision we just as a city don't want to make. I know a lot of this isn't sort of the purview of the Planning Commission, but I just wanted to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simons. Commissioner Shape.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who presented. It really helped to bring a lot of the documents that we read ahead of time to life and get a better understanding of what's going on. I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said. I'll just summarize that the two things I'm really thinking about, especially after our discussions today, are number one, connection with community, meaning people who live in Emeryville and prospective visitors. And number two is the new realities of gathering post-COVID, right? So in terms of connection with community, I agree with pretty much all of the concerns about the jewel box. I just looked back at the landscaping plans, and it looks like now there's landscaping that goes all around the building on the corner of 40th. And so my concern is basically that people are going to want to get closer to the art, and there's not really an opportunity for them to do that. And I think that's why the path had been there before. So it seems like it's not really feasible. It's going to end up with trampled plants or people who can't get as close as they would like to interact with the building. I agree with the concerns about not having an entrance on Hollis. It feels a little bit cut off. I do think that, kind of transitioning over to new realities of gathering, the two things on my mind are ventilation, making the space safe so that everyone will want to come to the Emeryville celebration of the arts and feel comfortable there for the next few years as we figure out what's going on with COVID going forward. So I think HVAC is really important. It sounds like a lot of those concerns have been taken into account now, and that's the sort of thing that we do need to design into the building at this point. Isolating spaces when necessary, but also making sure that the whole building is designed so that whether it's fires, smoke from the outside, whether it's COVID, that the building is set up to be a safe place for people to gather. The other aspect of that is maximizing outdoor space. So I'm really glad to hear more about the potential use of the space between City Hall and this building. And I agree with others that it seems like that space can be used no matter where the entrance is. So even if the main entrance is not towards City Hall, even if it's still on Hollis, that space can be used between City Hall and the building as long as there is an entrance available there. And that said, I think it would be great to maximize the amount of outdoor space available and appealing for people to gather with friends either before going into the building, while waiting in line, or while coming outside from co-working. So that's, I think that's one of the really key points for me. I'm really concerned that the sidewalk on Hollis is not going to meet the 12-foot minimum. No, I think that for me is probably the biggest takeaway from our conversation today is that, we've had discussions recently about other projects too. Like, this is our opportunity to upgrade the infrastructure for our street. I walk on Hollis with a stroller, and it's not always easy. And there's just going to be more foot traffic there as we make 40th easier for people to pass through. And so it's, to me, that's a really big factor. Let me see if there are other things that I wanted to bring up really quickly. I just want to thank the public commenters who called and wrote in. I think the comments were really helpful, especially hearing from the arts community. And I think I will leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Shape. Vice Chair Young.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. And basically, all my fellow commissioners have really said almost everything that I think. But I wanted to thank Mr. Keller for actually really breaking it down in a most wonderful way. Art is something. He's had a gallery. A lot of people don't know that I ran a gallery in Seattle for a little while, so it's something I'm aware of. And one thing that I know about what artists really want is a way to really express their work. Art doesn't just fit in a box. It can't. You're kind of an artist that really varies in size. What I see is an objective rendition of what a subjective kind of artist might want to do. And sadly, I feel that what has been taken away, that cafe was not just a cafe, but it was a place that maybe an installation could happen at the same time. And that got taken away. The reception, which was also a place where would open up kind of an expression from off the street. Well, with the great sidewalk and the new trees there, also would be a place to kind of drive people in. This isn't a relationship between City Hall and Art Center. It is kind of, but it's really, truly a relationship between local artists and Emeryville. And I think the plan that was before this one really, really covered that. It showed a sense of subjectivity to a kind of building and not just an objectivity turnaround of numbers. We art. Thanks, Stephen. That was awesome, because that's what kind of what happened. And I don't think, as much as I would invite somebody from Sonoma to bring their art down here, I would like to open up their eyes, because if you go up to their galleries up there, that's kind of what they did. They kind of compartmentalize basically their work because of what they do, except for some of them. And I think we are, and I think the expression that we need to pull. The other thing too is the jewel box. All right, so yes, it can be looked at from afar. I agree. Yes, it could be a cool bus stop. I agree. But I think what that corner really did was it was actually a big splash of paint before. It was every painting you look at, every sculpture you look at has a feature. It has a moment. It has an expression. The art ties around it. In this particular case, the building should as well. And I think that was one thing that was actually ripped out of the project. When I looked at it for the first time, I kind of first thought like, boy, am I looking at the plan that was designed before it? And then I kind of realized that's what I was looking at. I too agree with Mr. Simons's expression in terms of like, well, we shouldn't design around COVID because we really don't know. I mean, we're not trying to experiment from the fears of COVID. We're all trying to find a way to work around it. Yes, it's something we have to deal with it, but let's not use what these pent-up artists need to have to be able to pull that off. The cafe, I mean, and the administration. There is an administration that has to go on with these spaces. There really is. I mean, in my gallery, we had a small administration area, and I did it twice. But there is a place that you have to control the paperwork that actually handles the piece. There has to be a place that you keep your private documents and stuff inside there. There's a printer and stuff like that. That is a place that you have to deal with your work, and I just feel that's kind of torn away. And then in terms of the cafe, and the whole experience of the place. I mean, you guys showed up. I mean, at any of these Emeryville art things, and there are always more people than we could handle than what's actually there. So, thank you, my fellow commissioners, for bringing up all the previous comments. I think it was great. You guys really did, you guys did really great on trying to make the design work, but I think you had something prior. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Vice Chair Young. So I'm going to add my comments. I do want to thank the presenters for the presentations. Those are very helpful in terms of understanding the details of the project. And then I did want to also note that I have some of the same concerns that other commissioners have expressed. But I think my biggest question was really about the supposition around COVID and the emphasis on outdoor space, and then the sort of contradictory move of not being able to invest in the sidewalk. And so just wanted to note that the entrance, I agree, is a bit hidden, and perhaps the outdoor space could, make that very understandable as an entrance and as a pre-gathering outdoor space. But because of the site limitations, that wasn't described. And so I don't have a real sense of that other than sort of a comment about it, and then seeing an entrance which is fairly hidden. So I think the outdoor space just needs to be explained and then invested in if that really is some of the benefit of the project in a post-COVID world. And I think the same thing happens around the jewel box too. The outdoor space becomes that much more important, particularly without the immediacy of the connection in the interior of the building. I actually do appreciate the kind of workability of two sides that can operate separately, but sort of the efficiency that is there. But I am also concerned if the outdoor space isn't the place where you run into each other. There's so much efficiency in the building that there is no place that you run into each other. And so I think that to me is sort of just a concern about where that's really happening in this project. So I think in general, I just want to limit my comments because I think a lot of the comments were already said in terms of concerns and things that people liked about the project. So that is the end of my comments. Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up something I wanted to say that I'd forgotten is the thing, what I'm really surprised about is this has been presented to us as a minor change. This is substantively a major change. We have flipped the whole thing. We have kind of flipped the direction of this. So what I'm surprised at is that this has come to us for a vote of approval without a study session. I think tonight's meeting should have been a study session to give the group feedback on what we think works and what we don't believe works. And I don't believe that there's been adequate public participation in this, because if I remember correctly with the RFP, they wanted massive amounts of public input. And this big change, which I think is horrendous, I mean, this isn't little, we're not moving one room to here or there, we're making substantive changes to this project. And I think it's going to change how this building functions. So I think tonight's meeting should have been a study session, allowing for some public comment from the art committee. I don't think that anything has gone to them on this change in the process. So I think we've kind of circumvented the system and just brought up this thing is, oh, we want to move a window from here to here, would that be okay? And, you know, for me, for tonight, we're about to vote, and I can say this, I can't support this project tonight. I can't give it a yes vote, because I think the process, it should have been into a public, a study session and then brought back to public hearing. But I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Commissioner
Chair. Sorry, Madam
Yes.
Chair, if I may. I just wanted to remind the commission when they sort of switch to their deliberation and figuring out what they want their motion to be, that the focus is on whether the findings can be made. And those findings are the ones that are both in the staff report and then again in the resolution. And so the commission, staff has recommended how those findings can be made. And alternatively, what the commission should focus on is not whether they think the project is financially feasible, or even necessarily the RFQ process, because that really relates more to the LDDA. The focus is on whether the findings can be made. So I'm just trying to help you with your framework as you go into your deliberations.
Yeah, and I guess only, Maru, you often have a final slide about the findings. Do you have a slide in your presentation about the findings or not? You're on mute.
I do not.
Okay.
Can you tell us what page they are in the staff report?
Yes, I am in the PDF, and it starts on page maybe 19. Yeah. The end of 18, beginning of 19 in the PDF, which is where the resolution is.
I can share my screen and show you the findings if you would like me to do that.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let me just try to do that. All right, can you see that? Can everybody see that? Yes? Okay.
We can, yes.
This is the resolution that is in the packet. There are several different sets of findings that have to be made. The first one relates to general conditional use permit findings. First finding is that the proposed use is consistent with the general plan, and staff has crafted some language that describes that. Second is that the location, size, coverage, density, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed use will be compatible with and will not adversely affect the surrounding area, including neighborhood character, street design, capacity, safety, noise, and lighting. And we've got language about that. Third is that the proposed use is consistent with the capability of the water supply, wastewater disposal, fire, and police systems to operate adequately and cost effectively. And we've got language about that. Fourth, the proposed use at its proposed location will provide a service or facility that will contribute to the general well-being of the surrounding neighborhood or community. And fifth, the proposed use complies with all applicable standards and requirements of the planning regulations. Then the second set of findings is about preservation or reuse of a significant structure. And that finding is that the proposed project will retain and enhance all or most of the features of the structure that make it significant, as described and indicated in Table 9-5.1210. The next group of findings relates to design review. First is that the design of the project is consistent with the general plan, including but not limited to its urban design goals and policies. Second, the design of the project conforms to the Emeryville design guidelines and any other applicable design guidelines or criteria. If strict compliance with the provisions of such design guidelines or criteria is not achieved, the applicant must convincingly demonstrate that the intent of the guidelines is met. And third, the project is of a high design quality that is compatible with and will not adversely affect the surrounding area. And then the last group of findings relates to signs. First, the proposed sign is necessary because of the nature of the establishment and its location. Second, the proposed sign is no larger than is necessary to adequately identify the establishment, or the sign is of extraordinary design significance in justifying its size. Third, the proposed sign will comply with all applicable provisions of this article, including but not limited to design rules. Fourth, the size, materials, colors, graphics, style, illumination, and other features of the proposed sign are in keeping with the visual character of the area. Fifth, the sign will be readable, taking into account the proportions between different parts of the sign, its visibility from important vantage points and other relevant design features. And finally, the sign will relate well to the design of the building and will be compatible with its architectural features, colors, and textures. So those are the findings you need to make to approve this modification. Our draft resolution includes language for making all of these findings.
Thank you, Charlie.
Can I get clarification?
Commissioner Keller, go ahead.
Yeah. So Charlie, we have to be able to we have to make all these findings.
Yes, yes. To clarify, you must make all of these findings to approve. To deny, you only have to not be able to make one or more findings.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop sharing unless you want to still see this.
Okay, are there commissioner comments? I mean, we're still in the deliberation period. And I know sometimes when we have issues, if we cannot make a finding, we talk about how we could make a finding, whether or not there are some methods to change the language so that, this can move forward. Are there any suggestions?
Are you saying change the document so it fits the thing, or change
just at times we have discussed sort of conditions or comments, or decided that we can't do any comments. So I'm just leaving some space to do that, to say if there's any changes that would, materially change your vote or someone's vote, this is the time to talk about it. Okay. Seeing none, I think normally we would have a vote at this time.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question?
Sure, go ahead.
So can staff talk about sort of what's the next step in the process, assuming, if we were to say yes? Does it go to the city council and they can still make changes? What does the process look like from there?
I'm sorry, when you say yes, do you mean approve the project?
Approve the project, yes.
Well, the project itself, that is to say the planning entitlements, the conditional use permit and design review, would not go to the city council unless it were appealed to them. There is a 15-day appeal period after you make a decision, regardless of what that decision may be. And anybody can appeal to the city council, including the city council themselves, can appeal a planning commission decision to themselves. So if your decision tonight were appealed, then it would go to the city council for the ultimate decision. But if, say, you approve this tonight and it's not appealed within the 15-day appeal period, then that is the end of the road in terms of the planning entitlement. There is still some more process, I believe. I think Mr. Smalley mentioned that the LDDA will now need to be modified to reflect these approvals. Is that right, Chad?
That's correct. Yeah. Whatever the commission does tonight, in terms of approval or denial, and if it's approved, then we continue working on our amendment of the LDDA to incorporate these changes. If it's denied, it would be pending further discussions with our partner and understanding what happens in the event of appeal, if it's appealed.
And I have a question that relates to the consistency of the findings. Is that the sidewalk, and particularly the conversation we had about improvements to infrastructure, that is consistent with our regular, like we had this identified as a pedestrian corridor, that we wanted high quality sidewalks. That is something that is in our documentation. And we brought that up when we considered this before, and I know for economic reasons it is being eliminated, but it is a point of inconsistency, and so I just wondered, sort of how that's being considered.
Well, in the way we wrote it, to make that finding was that it is an existing non-conforming condition, and it is not being modified. So you're not, the project is not inconsistent with the general plan in that it is not, there is an existing condition that is not being modified.
But may I ask, isn't them modifying the curb considered it modified?
And overall changing the building use, the building function.
No, I'm just talking about that aspect. I'm talking about the sidewalk cross section on Horton.
I think we understand what we're saying is that we are changing the sidewalks by changing the curb cuts. And we're changing because the overall project itself, the building itself, is being readapted and reused. So you can split hairs however you want to. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but maybe what I could say is, as a commissioner taking a vote, I can't find three of the findings. I don't find the sidewalk is consistent. I don't find, because of the way the use has been changed to more of a co-working space instead of an art performance space, I don't find that's consistent with the community use. And I don't find the signage consistent with the way it wraps around and is kind of tucked in behind City Hall. I don't think it identifies. So for me, I can't find three of the findings, and those are the three that I can't find.
And to add to that, it says here that they need to provide public entrance that's visible and accessible. And I would say that the public entrance is not visible.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
Also agree.
So
Charlie, your recommendation.
I can make a motion that we deny the application based on those four, not being able to make those four findings.
I would second that. if that's a motion you want to write.
Well, that would be the proper next step, right, Charlie?
Unless you just want to continue the item to a future meeting.
No.
Not unless they come back with something different.
Right.
Okay.
Would they, if they came back with the old plan, what would happen then? If they said, okay, let's just go back to square two.
Well, I don't think they would need to do that.
Chad, you're muted.
If you were to deny this application that's before you tonight, then your previous approval from last August would stand.
Right. Thank
So
you.
the old project would still be in effect.
In effect.
Yeah.
Commissioner Schaaf?
I have a question about an alternative process. I don't know if now is the right time to ask that question or not.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so somebody mentioned that this could have been brought as a study session rather than the form that it's in now. I personally would be in favor of something like that. If the project developers were to come to us and say, look, we have economic concerns, we need to make some changes to this project. Here are a list of items we're considering for various reasons, changing in this building, and we need to pick 2 of the 5, something like that. I think that would be a really useful type of session. I don't know if that fits within the regulatory structure or the way that the Planning Commission can weigh in, but I just wanted to put it out there that I think that's a process that I would be much more comfortable with, and I think it could be really constructive.
My concern with that is that I was at that last Planning Commission in August, and we as a team looked at this building, and it's kind of like we were shown A, and then they come back around and show us something completely different. And I think Mr. Keller was absolutely right. I mean, it's a different project. This is if it is a study session. So I don't know. Just has something missing.
Okay. So I do want to explore the continuation option because I know that this is a public-private partnership and has sensitive timelines, has sensitive cost factors. Can you just elaborate if this gets continued, if this becomes an ongoing conversation, and we can get to a point where this could move forward with another meeting? Is that an option?
It's certainly an option to continue.
But Charlie, isn't continuing just bringing back the same thing? I mean, we have a resolution before us tonight. If we continue, we're just continuing that same resolution. And if we can't find the findings, unless some things are changed within that resolution via the project, then we're not bringing back the same project or continuing the same thing we have in the project. So what I think we should do is deny this, have them bring them back a change project in a study session, if you ask me. We fine tune it, then bring it back but I think tonight we have a resolution before us to either approve it or to deny it. And if we continue it, Andrea, maybe you can answer, can they bring it back and say, okay, we're gonna cut down the trees, we're gonna widen the sidewalk, we're gonna move the signs, and we're gonna adjust the programming a little bit to fit the thing. Can that be done on a continuation, or is that a new
Yeah, I think that was
resolution?
a good question. I'd like to know.
If I may, Chair, I mean, if this item is continued and the developer and the city in proprietary capacity go back, and let's say, because this has been a value engineering exercise, they can't make the suggestions pencil out, they would have to come back to the Planning Commission, and at that time, the Planning Commission could decide, whether they want to deny or approve the project. So they could come back, and it just sort of depends on what happens on those subsequent conversations.
Yeah, and maybe this is a question more for the city and the applicant, and you guys can decide who answers it, but that question of would changes be viable? Is there room for change?
I think that's a question that the city staff can't answer at this time, because you got to go back, you have to do the number crunching, you have to talk to the developer. And really the viability is in the role of the city council in its proprietary capacity.
Sure.
And so what the Planning Commission's role is here tonight is the city as the regulator, and focusing on the design and on any use impacts of the project. And so that's the purview of the commission tonight. And some of the other concerns that the commission has raised, and certainly these sort of things come up when we talk about projects, and applicants consider it in the same way. the applicant here, ODI, and the city will consider that. But in terms of the actual action by the Planning Commission tonight, the commission isn't in the seat to, focus on economic viability.
Okay. So yeah, so our process options are to vote, and then it can be considered by a higher authority, or to continue and potentially no change. And so that's not the same as having a study session. So just for clarity of like other procedures. Okay, I think that's clear. Does anyone else have any questions?
Chair Thompson, if I may,
Yep.
I believe there is a motion on the floor, a motion and a second on the floor. And before we proceed on that, I would like to just be crystal clear on exactly what the findings are that are being identified here. So if with your permission, I'm going to share my screen again and bring up those findings.
Yep, please do.
Commissioner Mendez, do you want to mention yours first and I'll add on my three, or do you want me to go first?
Hang on a second, I have to find them. I have to find the findings. Okay, there we
I have
are.
to get up for a minute and turn on lights in my room. It's getting dark.
Okay, here we go. So these are not in any particular order, but Commissioner Keller mentioned the sign and something about.
I'll go up to the section 1.
Okay.
At the top.
All right, let's just do that. Proposed use.
And I would recommend just identifying it and then polling the group, identifying and polling the group. That way we can just go through them all.
So, go ahead, Charlie.
No, I just wanted, you mentioned 4 findings. I just want to make sure.
I mentioned 3 and Commissioner Mendez mentioned 1. So the first one I mentioned was the sidewalk.
All right,
So,
that was under design review, I believe. And where
Park
is
Avenue
that?
District Guide, oh, it was right there. I think, Park Avenue, if you go back, yeah, go to section 3A. Park Avenue District Guidelines, preserving the and then way before that.
Charlie, that would be section 3B, where it talks about the applicable design guidelines or criteria.
Yeah, okay.
We can know that's about maintaining height.
So since we're there, actually under 3B, where it says E12 in the bold, it says providing public entrance, around there. So right before E12, it says providing public entrances that are visible and accessible.
Oh, okay.
I would say the public entrance is not visible.
Okay.
Then mine came before that. I'm beginning to lose track of what they were.
So Charlie,
Yes.
if I could just kind of maybe quickly summarize.
Thank you.
And also we should be referring to the code sections. It's a clearer record as opposed to the sections in the resolution.
Well, this resolution references the code section.
Exactly.
And it's
exactly.
97407A is what, or B is what we're talking about now.
Yes. So with respect to the comment about the sidewalks not being consistent, I believe that comment would satisfy section 97.407A and potentially 97505E, I believe. And then for the co-working space use issue, that would go towards the findings required by 9-7.505A and E. The signage not consistent. Sorry, that was just my note. The comment, the motion regarding the signage finding would be 9-5.1612C2.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? 9-5.
9-5.1612C2.
Okay.
And then with respect to Commissioner Mendez' comment regarding the public entrance, that would go to a finding required by 9-7.407B.
Right. Okay.
So perhaps what the commission, just in helping the commission put it in proper form, it would be that the commission could not make the findings pursuant to 9-407A, 9-7.505A and E, 9-5.1612C2, and 9-7407B for the 4 reasons that were stated in the motion.
You also mentioned 9-7.505E.
Yes.
Okay. So, Commissioner Keller, would you like to clarify that your motion is to deny the application based on the findings that the city attorney just recited?
I would.
And Vice Chair Young, you are seconding that motion.
I am seconding that, yes, thank you.
All right. Chair Thompson?
Yeah, so
are you ready to take a look?
I think we are ready for, yep.
All right, this is on the motion to deny the application or the modifications based on the findings that were just recited by the city attorney. Commissioner Chafe?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Mendez?
Aye.
Commissioner Simons?
Aye.
Commissioner Zepko is absent. Vice Chair Young?
Aye.
And Chair Thompson?
Aye.
6 ayes, the application is denied. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I just want to say I don't disrespect the work they did. I just think it's not the project that the city is looking for. And we can't make this finding. So, but I do want to respect the work that the staff and the project team has done.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, thank you. We're going to move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the commissioner comments. And basically that, yeah, no comments.
I just want to give a thought. I just want to. Oh,
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to give all of us to give a little thought, since we're in the building industry, of those poor people that are stuck in Florida. That's about it. But, yeah, little thoughts on that.
And I want to say, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And of course, I'll let you take it from there, Stephen.
I don't want to bogart the floor here. No, I just want to express appreciation to Chair Thompson for her service in her years. And she's been an inspiration. She keeps us, there's always one commissioner that focuses on one thing that I weaken. And for Chair Donaldson, that was always the landscaping. And Chair Thompson always did the design guidelines and sustainability. And she often thought of things that I didn't think of. So you're going to be sorely missed for that. I hope you're moving and staying nearby, but you're buying a house, hopefully, or getting a better place for your family. But I really am going to miss your leadership and just your partnership and being on the commission. And thank you for the service that you did.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Commissioner Chase?
I just want to echo what was said. I'll really miss having you on the commission. I think it's been about a year since I joined, maybe a little bit less, and really glad that I had a chance to serve with you under your chairship, and and best of luck. And I also want to say thank you to everyone just for being so collegial. I think we had a really interesting meeting tonight, and I always learn a lot from all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mendez?
Yes, I also want to echo what the other commissioners said, that you will sorely be missed. You were definitely an inspiration, and someone who I looked up to because you brought up things that I didn't consider, and then always sparked something in me to kind of maybe something else that I didn't think of until you said it. And so you will definitely be missed. That's it. And it was really great serving with you on this commission. I wish it was longer, but I'm sure that you are moving on and are very excited for your new place. And I wish you the best.
Thank you, Commissioner Mendez. I wanted to just say to everyone else, though, it was great to serve with New Crop and with the older statesmen, and and just participate in the community of Emeryville. It's a great community, and we're actually moving across the border, so we will look on to Emeryville. We're actually on Folger Ave, very, very close. But the housing configuration is better for us and things. I'll miss being, not being able to participate, but we'll be nearby, and I assume I will run into everyone all the time. So, thank you again. It has been a pleasure to serve.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess I'm going to officially adjourn the meeting at 8:46.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.